On Rockies, some early projections. Thinking about the team, are they going to be as bad as some of these projections state?
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 10th day of January in the year 2023, inching ever closer to baseball back in action here this year. I am your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. And if your team is the Colorado Rockies, well, guess what? You are in the right spot, because that's what we do here on the Locked On Rockies podcast, is talk Colorado Rockies baseball, because we love the Colorado Rockies. Some people might ask why. Well, it's because they are great. And wow, tuned as always from Italy. Hello to you. I'm hoping I'm going to get this right. Matteo, I hope I'm saying that right. Wow, what an honor. Thank you so much for tuning in, Rockies fans. We got support from France, we got support from Italy. Europe loves the Colorado Rockies, and we're going to talk some projections today on the Locked On Rockies podcast. And some of these early looks at the Rockies aren't necessarily great, and for good reason. I think the Rockies are going to be a team that aren't going to succeed in a ton of areas, but I think we're going to see overall better Rockies baseball this year, because better meaning their bad stretches, I just don't think they can replicate. Just like they were bad on the road last year, right? But they weren't as historically bad on the road as they were the year before. Some of this stuff isn't sustainable. And while the Rockies haven't made a ton of flashy moves, there is a lot of difference on this Rockies roster going into 2023. Think about the players you're not going to see be on the Rockies lineup, and more so on the offense side. There's no Sam Hilliard. There's no Garrett Hampson. There's no Connor Joe. Those are three of the names already gone. There's no Jose Iglesias. And of course, the big question mark of Chris Bryant. And we did a whole podcast last week about what Chris Bryant can really bring to this team. So when you look at it from a nuts and bolts perspective, the Rockies are going to be very similar to what they were like last year. But they might get little flashes, little things from on the offensive side that they haven't had. If Eleris Montero comes out and actually is hitting for power, if he's someone that the Rockies are actually getting, as he talked about himself a lot in the last part of the season, and during his time with the Rockies, he carries himself, and I believe he thinks he's going to add some thump into the lineup here. And again, I've talked a lot about Montero being my top prospect, but let's not forget, if Sean Bouchard can come up and bring in a great approach for the Rockies here, that's going to be an interesting wrinkle as well. What is going to be an encouraging sign for the differences of the Rockies is the fall off from their hot start, because let's be real, it's a pretty big cycle we go through as Rockies fans, right? It's the season starts, opening day, they play the Dodgers, they win the series against the Dodgers, they get their 2 days at the top of the NL West, and then by the end of the first month of the season, things have kind of more settled out. The Rockies have probably suffered a big time injury that set them back, or the offense has fallen off, the pitching, yada yada yada. If the Rockies can just avoid the big bad early stretch where things just go completely wrong for what seems like the first, an early 2-week chunk of the season, the Rockies will be a better team this year. They're not going to be a great team. I mean, heck, if you listen to me last year, I had the Rockies as a sleeper third wild card team. I don't think that anymore. I think the level of competition, the free agency market, and the state of the NL West is going to be the big things to get in the way of the Rockies having a shot at the playoffs next year. But is this a team that can win more ball games than it did last year? Is this a team that can win more than 68 games next year? Yeah, absolutely. I really do think that's possible with the new balanced schedule, with the Rockies, with the Rockies changing up a lot of things. I mean, again, we are not only going to see the core prospects from within the system, but the Rockies' small minor league deals, they just made 2 more moves to add to the bullpen and add to that stuff. I mean, the Rockies have brought in a lot of new players. And so you already can sit here and say, well, it's going to be different. Maybe it's not super different, because when you really look at how it's going to roll out, the Rockies offense is going to look pretty similar to how it did at the end of last season with the players that were being rolled out there, with the big added addition of a healthy Chris Bryant. And that's something too, as we talked about. There's too many new things with this team for me to immediately just sit back and think that they're going to be one of the worst teams in baseball. I saw a thing on MLB.com, and I think it was like a New Year's resolution power ranking combo thing. And it had the Rockies, rightfully so, they ding them for not having a direction, and their New Year's resolution should be to find one, which can be argued. But again, even with that, the Rockies are committing to something right now. It might not be the thing we liked, and again, what they could have done, but with the Rockies' actions so far this offseason, you can't say that they aren't committed to seeing what these prospects are going to be like. They are opening. We've talked all offseason long. The door is open for these prospects. The Rockies are saying, people don't get it on the outside, but the Chris Bryant thing was, the Chris Bryant signing is clear that the Rockies wanted to keep, no matter what, a bona fide long-term superstar. They have a World Series champion and an MVP that's going to be on their team for the next 6 years. And he's going to be the stalwart there. The production's one thing, but the Rockies have their superstar. I'd argue that they have a budding superstar at second base, ready to really make a big name for himself in the league next year in Brendan Rodgers. But that was the big thing with Chris Bryant. Now they're paving the way. By not going after some of these names, even with the 1-year deals, as much as I still think that could have helped the team, the door still remains open, that the Rockies are saying, we are trusting we're seeing what these prospects are. This is what's going to happen, because so whether that's the identity you want the Rockies to have or you disagree with it, we can finally say that through this offseason, the moves they've made, they have a plan. However, you can still criticize that, because if this was the plan and the Rockies were willing to commit to this, the inactivity yet again at the trade deadline is another step in the wrong direction. The Rockies have to be sellers. The team needs to sell at the deadline. Every year, the Rockies are not competitive at the trade deadline. They need to sell. Sell a piece. It really, truly is. Why did Jose Iglesias finish the season with the Rockies last year? Why did CJ Cron finish the season with the Rockies last year? We learned a little bit from Patrick Lyons about how the trade market kind of cooled for Cron and such after the injury and things. But those are the type of questions that you still kind of get frustrated with. Well, if this is going to be the identity, why are you not buying into that identity a little bit more? Let's take a look at the live chat here. Going back out to Italy. Man, that's so cool. And a couple of questions here and a couple of comments from the live chat. We'll also take a look at some of the odds for the Rockies, because I'm going to tell you about one of our sponsors, which is BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one spot for all your sports betting info, the stats, the news, analysis. Look, they got the futures up. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that here in just a little bit, but you can get in on future bets for baseball. You can get in on World Baseball Classic future bets. You can get in on playoff betting for football, and it all wrapped up, but college sports, the big tournament coming up here in just a couple of months. BetOnline's got you covered for all that sports betting info that you need. They got sports podcasts over there too. They're the fastest and easiest way to get all your betting info. It's betonline.net. And you can head to that website, betonline.net today, or use your mobile device to learn more about BetOnline. BetOnline, where the game starts. Let's dive into the live chat here. Angel17 says, I think the Rockies are a sleeper team. Their schedule is light considering the fact that they are facing every team in the league. The Rockies are definitely going to be a team that benefits from the balanced schedule. I think we've said this a lot, and we're going to continue to say it because that is key. The Rockies aren't going to have those really tough stretches where it's Giants at home, going to California, and then a tough series with Arizona. Less time less time against the NL West is going to be a big difference between the 2020, every Rockies team in the past, and the 2023 Rockies, and I think could absolutely be a factor in this Rockies team avoiding 68 losses. And again, I'm not out here saying that the Rockies are going to be great. I think I got to keep reiterating that. But can the Rockies get over 70 wins next year? I think the answer is absolutely. Matteo from Italy, he says, we have a bunch of very interesting kids, and I think we have to pave the way to developing a team and adding some veterans. Within a couple of seasons, we'll be a playoff contender for sure. Let's just trust the process. That's the thing. If, like we were talking about in segment number 1 there, about if this is the plan, that's okay. Just fully buy into that plan and get ready to embrace it. I'm okay with you're not saying it, front office, but we're kind of feeling it. And I'm okay embracing for the 2023 season, thinking that the Rockies are going young again. That's good news. That's good news to me. The one that's always going to follow the Rockies all the time. Might not be great news to the casual Rockies fan that wants to see the Rockies of 17 and 18, but that is how you get back to that. Because if those 4 guys pan out, if those 4 guys have good seasons, great seasons, if we're even lucky, then massive for the Colorado Rockies. And then you can use the trade deadline to do some interesting things. And then you can go into the offseason confident in knowing that you have a strong foundation of young players, a big veteran presence in Chris Bryant. And you at that point, it's, what do you do with Brendan Rodgers, extending him? And you have Ryan McMahon, and you have your other pieces you can move around. You can do things in the outfield. And of course, the pitching is the whole other side of the coin. I know we haven't really talked about a lot about that, but again, the Rockies doing what they're doing, the sneaky small moves, I think with the way they're handling the bullpen is the right way to do it. They are adding a bunch of veteran arms, not necessarily knock your socks off great arms, but veteran arms that can come in and see what type of impact they can have for the bullpen. And I think that's a better way to approach retooling and repurposing this Rockies bullpen right now. Let's dive back in here to the live chat. Alec Hart says, do you think we'll cut down Blackmon's ABs a lot this year, or will he still get 500 to 600 like last year? Charlie Blackmon is such an interesting factor for the Rockies. And I think you have to look at Charlie Blackmon, and he's not going to like it, but he is going to be someone that you look at to take at bats from, because he's going to be locked into the DH. I really can't. Charlie Blackmon will still play some outfield next year. He definitely will. How much? I don't think that is a lot. I do think Charlie Blackmon will see less at bats this year. It's just a matter. The problem is when you look at some of the statistics, the offensive statistics for the Rockies needed Charlie Blackmon. He wasn't great, but he still hit the ball somewhat decently. Wasn't great, but in terms of contributing for the Rockies, he still did some. I mean, 16 home runs, 78 RBIs, 264 average, 314 OBP, and OPS of 733. Again, nothing great. And almost a career low in batting average. But unfortunately, when you're looking at that, and you're looking at those lows, and you're looking at the struggles of Charlie Blackmon, he contributed a good chunk for the Rockies offense. However, it's again, with the identity, with the decisions you're making, you need to really choose carefully where your veterans are getting their earned playing time and where you fit in your young guys. And Charlie Blackmon is a player that gets in the way of the young guys next year, especially Eleris Montero. So the Rockies are going to have to ask themselves the question of what bat is going to have more of an impact in our lineup, Charlie Blackmon or Eleris Montero. And I mean, it's tough because you know what Charlie can do, but this is not the Charlie of the past. So I would say Charlie sees less at bats in 2023. Especially he got the injury late in the season. There's some things there. Well, so we'll have to keep an eye on that because it's just so hard to think of Blackmon not getting in the lineup almost every day, if not every day. But again, how do you get those guys in? The conversation continues to continue of that with the young guys. So let's see here. Eric Harper, of course, here, our main man out there. Definitely down on the Rockies pitching. He says our pitching will probably be pretty bad again this year, though. We'll see. It's going to be different. And what the Rockies have, that's the other thing. If the Rockies can hit like they did with Dinelson Lamet on Brett Suter, then that's going to be great. I mean, if Dinelson Lamet and Brett Suter are two solid arms for the Rockies, that just is a huge problem for the Rockies because you didn't really have a middle relief or relievers that you were confident in. If the Rockies can have two people they feel confident in pitching the 7th and the 8th, and that sets up Bard for the 9th, that's exactly what you need to do because the Rockies are going to feel the loss of Carlos Estevez next year. When it comes to evaluating if the Rockies are going to be one of the worst teams in baseball, the big things we've talked about are going to continue to remain true. How is the pitching going to bounce back, especially from the starters? How does the new philosophy of new hitting coaches and new hitting and a new look on offense impact the Rockies? How much does Chris Bryant impact the Rockies? How much can you get from Rockies pitching? Those are going to be the big things because my thing is when you look at the odds, and Mateo, I see your question. We'll get to that in segment number 3. When you look at the odds to win the World Series from our friends at BetOnline, the Rockies are tied with the Royals, and the only teams below them in terms of odds are the Pirates, Reds, the Athletics, and the Nationals. Teams above them include the Tigers, the Diamondbacks, the Marlins, the Twins. I wonder if that's going to change with the Correa news today, which, by the way, the Carlos Correa news. Oh, my goodness. Heading to Minnesota now? Sheesh. Red Sox, Orioles. There's teams that I just wonder. The Rockies are better than the Nationals, Athletics, Reds, Pirates, Royals. I still think they're better than the Tigers. I think they're better than, if the Marlins don't add any offense, they're better than the Marlins. Better than the Cubs. Maybe. That's a toss-up. We'll see. And that might be it. But I just don't think the Rockies, if last year's team didn't lose 100 games, they were close. I mean, don't get me wrong. Very, very close. But if that team didn't lose 100 games, A team that gets a healthy Chris Bryant for a year, a team that has moved on from utility pieces and pieces that it's leaned on for at least new faces, new opportunities, new ideas. Eh, I just don't think that they are going to be worse than they were last year, and because of that, I don't think they're going to be they will be a bottom team in baseball, but they are not going to be the bottom of the bottom. And I think they're going to win a lot more close games than people think this year. Let's take a look at the live chat one more time, and let's take a look and kind of summarize what our thoughts are on the 2023 Rockies, and if there's enough difference and enough things to be excited about next year. But before we do that, I want to tell you, you should make Locked On MLB Prospects your second listen of the day. They got you covered for all things farm systems in baseball, especially with all this Rockies improvement in terms of the farm system. But Lindsey Crosby, friend of the show, had him on multiple times. So make sure you go check that out. But also want to tell you about Built Bar. Built Bar is delicious. I mean, if you're looking for something new, if you're looking for a new treat and you don't want the fat, you don't want the calories, you don't want the sugar, then you got to try Built Bar. There's all, you're still going through it. You're rocking and rolling with the resolutions. You're trying to eat better. Built Bar is going to help you do that because they're covered in 100% real chocolate. They taste great. They have unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter, brownie, and coconut almond. And you're like, yes, delicious things I love. But here's the macros, folks: 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and 17 grams of protein. So, when you're getting a little sweet treat, it's not like you're eating one of those candy bars chock full of sugar, calories, and all that bad stuff. I know I'm a chocoholic. I got the biggest sweet tooth on the planet. Built Bars help with that. And now you don't have to wait around and just order off of the Built website. You can still head to built.com, don't you worry. But they're at Sam's Club and Walmart now, so you can go pick up a box of your favorite now at your local Sam's Club or Walmart. But of course, you can check them out at built.com. Don't miss out and grab a Built Bar today. Let's dive into the live chat. Mateo says, Paul, do you know if the Rockies as an organization would officially recognize a foreign fan club in the event of its foundation? The Rockies are always connected on social and doing things. I'm sure they would like to do stuff with people. I have no idea. Because I don't really have too many ties or connected to inside the front office or the inner workings of the Rockies or the business there. But with how active they are, with how many people come into Denver, I mean, I would say they would love to get involved with fans from across the world. So I think it would be a great idea. Eric Harper says 6 years for Correa is a win for the Twins. Getting Correa back is a win for the Twins. I mean, after everything that happened there, and that's where Carlos Correa ends up. He gets to go back to the Twins. Because if you're the Twins, you kind of already knew the issue, right? You just saw him for the last year. You've had your doctors and everyone looking at Correa for the last year. He's been working with your training staff and everything. So for Twins fans, that's a slam dunk win. Rockies need a fan section like in the MLS. That would be cool. It would definitely flip the game of baseball upside down if fans started cheering like baseball, like the MLS at soccer games. Could the Twins be a trade partner for McMahon? They don't have pitching to spare in exchange. I don't think the Rockies move anybody in terms of their position players if pitching isn't the return. I certainly hope not. If you're the Rockies, there are other teams that could, with good pitching, that could certainly use your position players. Oakland's got a really, really good bullpen too. Miami, we've talked about, of course. The Rays always have pitchers. I just think that the Rockies could do some more interesting things. And if you're going to make trades, if you're going to move on from some of these players, why not get the best pitching possible? Maybe, and going to some of those and getting some top prospects, maybe that's a different story. Or a couple of lottery ticket prospects. That wouldn't be the worst idea. Would you trade Bryant for Eloy and Sheets? I mean, the question is, could you trade Chris Bryant? But are you talking Eloy Jimenez from the White Sox? I mean, that's very interesting. You know, wonderful. It's a really good line, a really good season last year. I just don't think I would imagine the White Sox, if you're gonna like, that would be. I just don't think the Rockies would get a ton back for Chris Bryant. That contract, the lack of anything last year, I think that would be tough. But I like your take here about the Rockies making the second wild card. I mean, baseball is weird. Baseball is a weird sport. The Phillies were dead in the water last year. They made a change. They turned it around. They won enough to punch the ticket and make it to the dance, and look where they ended up. Yes, they were outpowered, and Houston was the better team. Yes, that's fine. But you don't sit there and say that the Phillies run wasn't special. I'm seeing you're mentioning the Orioles. The Orioles have they've developed, and they really believe. But now the Rockies believe they're a draft and developed team. The Rockies will take a big step forward if these 4 prospects turn out to be legit. And legit in the sense of they don't need to be rookies of the year. They don't need to all be in a 4-way tie for that. They just need to be major league. They need to be able to contribute, and 1 or 2 of them needs to be excellent. And I Tovar or Montero need to be excellent, hopefully, for this to happen. If you're talking second wild card, you got to make sure. I mean, the offense. Ryan McMahon needs to be contributing. Brendan Rodgers needs to be doing in some need to do. And no Trevor Bauer. I don't even need it. You don't need to go that package. I can't imagine the Rockies would be a team that go after Bauer. I don't think they see that. I'm good. I mean, he hasn't played. I'm not a fan, and we don't need to dive too much into it, but personally, I just don't see that as a fit at all. Could it happen? I think it's an interesting thing, I guess, but I don't see that happening for the Rockies. But let's see here. Mateo here. Let's see the NBA situation where organizations like Memphis, New Orleans are doing great. Even they don't represent big markets. Good draft calls, some smart transfers, and there you go. This is the way to beat the bigger markets where the money and the prestige are. You nail it. The Rockies are never going to compete in terms of spending. They're never the Mets and all these teams. They're going to have to trade smart. They're going to have to develop. But they're also not afraid to spend a little money either. That's the one thing that we do have to remember and not let the Rockies off the hook. If you're willing to get Chris Bryant, you need to be willing to go after the big names when the team is in another position. If you are willing to do the Chris Bryant deal, you need to be willing to do that deal again when the time is right to do something big, to make the massive splash, to get the big free agent, like you should have done with the 17 and 18 team. But it is definitely something that we should remember with the Rockies. But yes, the Rockies' path to success is going to come through draft and develop. It is going to be drafting, picking the right players, making smart trades, and really turning it up at the trade deadline. The Rockies need to be way more active at the deadline. But to put a bow on today's episode, as we're getting a little long here, the Rockies will be better next year. Not by much, but they have the right things in place. They've made the right moves to mix things up in terms of the Rockies. There are going to be a lot of new looks. There's going to be a lot of new faces. There's a lot of new opportunities for players, and the Rockies might have some sneaky, great veteran bullpen ads. Not great. I'm sorry. Sneaky, good veteran bullpen ads to make this team a little bit better, and hopefully a new philosophy, a new coach on offense gets this team back to where it needs to be, an offensive team, an offense that makes teams scared to go there. And because you're definitely going to be looking into that. we will answer this question tomorrow. We'll kind of continue our preview and kind of that, but short answer for you, Bell. Yes, expect the Rockies to be bad on the road because historically they are, but it's a new season. Who knows with all the teams being on the road with the new schedule stuff? I really think it's interesting to see that the Rockies are going to spend more time on the road in different places too. So maybe that's going to impact the Rockies and their road performances as well. But I think that's a topic that we need to dive more into because I think it's an interesting thing to keep in mind. And our friend and Matteo from Italy with a nice closing thought. I also think that Bryant did not join us just because of the money he'll get in his pocket, but I think he's genuinely convinced that our vision is good. And if the Rockies convince Chris Bryant that they have a vision and they have a plan and it made an MVP and a World Series champ believe into it, while also, of course, making that wallet a little fatter, then, hey, I love it. I think that's great news. I've just been burned by these Rockies front office too many times to make me fully confident and believe, but I think that is, I love the optimism. Hey, we're Rockies fans. We can't lose faith all the time. We got to be realistic. We got to keep our heads on straight, but it's projection season. It's the off season. This is what we do right now. We make projections about the Rockies and we can hope for the best. Because why not hope for the best? Because when the season goes through, we suffer enough, right? But folks, huge thanks to the live chat today. What an incredible live chat from the audience today. And you can be part of it. Subscribe to Locked On Rockies on YouTube so you know when we go live. Thank you to all of you for participating in the live chat today. Man, what so many great questions. Completely. It helps out the show so much when you guys come in with the questions and it helps things move along. But folks, you can follow us on Twitter at LO Rockies. You can follow me at Paul Holden 33. Subscribe to Locked On Rockies on YouTube. If you hit that 5-star rating there on your streaming services, massive help to the show there. But like I said, make Locked On MLB Prospects your second listen of the day and stay up to date with all things Colorado sports with the Locked On Broncos, Locked On Avalanche, and Locked On Nuggets podcast. And folks, until next time, this is Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.